This is Patrick Patterson, VP of Operations for IntegrityFX.com. Today is April 21st, 2009, and I want to take a few moments and talk to you about the automakers. You know, one of the things that we've seen going back to December 2008 is that the automakers have been, in particular the U.S. automakers, have been struggling with their finances. In 2008, they approached Congress for $25 billion. Now, during that time, they were looking to try to maintain their solvency. However, since then, a lot of things have changed. And I really want to touch on GM and Chrysler in particular, just because Ford has decided to turn down the money and has made their way along without any help from the government. Taxpayers should rejoice at this, but not too loudly, because GM and Chrysler look like they're going to go ahead and dismantle or merge with the likes of Fiat. I'm going to say more about that as we go along, but before I do, I want to revisit some questions we asked going back to December 2008. Now, one of the questions we asked was, what will $25 billion do? And what we had learned at the time is that each of the companies burns through roughly $13 billion per month. And you could see that $25 billion split between them wasn't going to do a whole lot. Now, what Congress wanted to do was have them buy 90 days of time and look at exactly what models they could put together that would help them become solvent or at least push into that arena. They were then going to give them additional money as they saw progress in their financials. Well, the economy grew a little worse, and the business plans that they put forward didn't work. And now we've seen that GM has actually had to ask their CEO to step down, actually at the behest of the president. And I'm not sure that President Obama has a legal right to ask a CEO of a private company to step down, but he did, and it has happened. What we're seeing now is that the former VP has stepped into his place, Fritz Henderson, and he's a longtime GE employee too. He's been with them for 30 years. I'm not sure how replacing Wick Wagner with Fritz Henderson actually helps them do the job any better. Obama also put together an auto task force team that is actually taking a close look at the financials for GM and probably Chrysler as well. We don't have a lot of information about what they're doing with Chrysler, but we know that with GM, they're actually recommending that they dismantle operations and prepare for bankruptcy. In the last few days, we've learned that GM's plan did not work and that they're actually pushing forward to look at bankruptcy, and they've actually let go 1,600 white-collar workers. This is major blow to the GM company. But if we look past that and we go back to some of the other questions we have, one of our chief concerns is, how will this affect major towns in the United States? So what we want to do is take a look at what is happening with suppliers. And what we discovered in taking a look at them is that a lot of the suppliers actually depend on GM to actually fund their businesses. If GM goes under, an entire line of parts and services will be gone, never to return, and the company will fold. And so in many cases, we're only talking about hundreds of workers, but in other cases, we're talking about entire plants that are dedicated to giving GM the kind of parts and services that it needs in order to get a particular line for cars rolling. We also have to look at factory towns. Some of these towns depend exclusively on GM in order to survive, and they are going away little by little. Some are just in dire straits. You notice I said just there, while others are actually insolvent, and people are actually abandoning the town, and they will soon become ghost towns. Are we going to see many of these happen? GM is talking about massive restructuring such that many lines would be gone, because trying to just kill lines like Pontiac or Saturn won't get the job done. If we look at what's happening with Chrysler, Chrysler has a different sort of issue on the table, and what they're trying to do is actually merge with Fiat. The problem is that Fiat is a French company, and their cars are not overly popular in the United States. I'm not sure how merging with a French company would actually help Chrysler remain solvent. Not only that, the details have not been disclosed about exactly how funds would be shared or what powers would be granted to Fiat. We assumed that they would have a major market share of the company, that being Chrysler, but we're not certain. So what we have is we have two very ailing automakers that don't look like they're going to make it to 2010. Now, one of the other things we want to discuss is how does this actually have an impact on the currency markets? Well, it's sort of an indirect effect. What we're really looking at is how will the unemployment that is going to skyrocket if GM actually goes into bankruptcy and goes under, how will that affect the economy at large? We speculate that it will impact it very hard, that there will be a massive downturn, and we'll see that this is not really a bottom that people have been trying to call. Unemployment is going to go up because GM employs approximately 266,000 people around the world, many of those in the United States. Also, many people who are driving GM cars won't be able to get parts and supplies as quickly as they used to, since many of those suppliers will be going under. And so we're going to see sort of a slippery slope happen as GM falls into bankruptcy, and then we won't know exactly what's going to happen with Chrysler if it merges with Fiat, and those talks are in trouble. So as you look at the currency market and you compare what I've just shared with you to what could happen, you might look cautiously at the US dollar. It might be a good idea to be cautiously bullish as we push forward. We don't know exactly what Treasury Secretary Geithner is going to do with the auto task force, but one thing we know for sure is that whatever happens in the next few days with the GM and the Chrysler brands, that it's going to mean the loss of a lot of jobs, and it's also going to mean that taxpayers are going to have to come out of their pocket for more money. The latest thing that we've heard is this: $5 billion will go to GM as they slowly unwind their holdings in places around the world, and $500 million will go to Chrysler, and we're not exactly sure they'll be here next year. Stay tuned for more information about this, and keep your eyes on how the currency pairs are affected as employment rate rise as GM and Chrysler dismantle.